This week, Conflict Zone is in Berlin, where the Foreign Minister of Egypt, Sameh Shoukry, has been holding talks with German officials. It's 5 years since the revolution that brought down Hosni Mubarak. 5 years of killing, chaos, and human rights abuses. How long can this government go on insisting that it's on the road to democracy? Sameh Shoukry, welcome to Conflict Zone.
How do you do?
8 months ago, your own National Council for Human Rights said in its annual report the right to life in Egypt witnessed horrible deterioration in 2013-2014. You promised security and stability, or at least your president did when he came to power. Hasn't brought it, has he?
No, I think he has to a degree, and the government has provided a much higher sense of security and stability than what we have previously had to endure over these last 5 years.
Really? 1,223 attacks in the 2 years after you took over, 78 in the 2 years before. The figures wouldn't bear that out, would they?
Well, the figures bear out that there's a degree of insistence on the part of some to try to destabilize Egypt, to try to utilize terrorism as a way to subvert the will of the Egyptian people, and that although the volume might be high, but the impact, fortunately, especially in the populated area where the targets are indiscriminate and basically are trying to inflict damage on innocent civilians, there has been a great deal of ability to restrict the potential impact.
But the numbers of attacks tell a different story, don't they? They tell a story
numbers don't
of a security situation that is steadily worsening in your country.
No, as I said, the numbers
Egypt's
indicate...
a war zone, isn't it?
No, hardly. I think if you were to come to Egypt, if you were to ask the normal Egyptian, he is now much more secure, much more confident of the ability of the government to provide this security. The number, again, indicates the desire and the commitment of organizations that are utilizing terrorism to try to circumvent
and your inability to stop them. The fact is, though, that you can't protect foreign tourists, can you? We've had at least 3 attacks on tourists over the last few months, along with a mistaken attack in September by your own forces that killed 10 tourists and injured a dozen more in the Western Desert. So it's not only the tourists who are killing, you're killing tourists yourself by mistake.
Well, again, I would not categorize it in that manner. I think it's
That's
important.
the reality, though, isn't it?
Those are the circumstances, and the circumstances have to be borne within the overall and general context of what is happening. And I think
that's not much compensation to the people who die, is it?
Making broadest, sweeping statements do not help to indicate to those who are interested to know the facts, what exactly is happening. We have had our difficulties with terrorism, as the world has had its difficulties with terrorism. That does not preclude that we and other countries are coping with this phenomena to the best of our abilities. There have been casualties not only in Egypt, but in various other countries.
Most serious casualties, 224 people.
That does not make our ability less than those others that have been subjected to this sort of vicious and indiscriminate attacks.
Well, the Russian plane that was bombed out of the sky over northern Sinai in October the 31st, 224 people died. They didn't feel very protected, and they weren't very much interested in the context. They were interested in the fact that your security suffered a serious lapse, and as a result, a bomb was put aboard their plane.
On the presumption that it is a bomb, and I cannot rule in or rule out the potential of what caused the plane.
The Russians are absolutely certain it's a bomb. They came out and said that.
I can only speak for myself, and having knowledge of the investigation that is underway, and that has not confirmed one way or another. But as I started, I cannot rule in or rule out, but I can only indicate that we undertake our responsibilities to the best of our ability, that no country can ascertain that it can provide 100% security, but we can provide as close to 100% of effort And this is what we are trying to achieve with the help of our friends and partners, both in Western Europe and the United States.
How is it that you can't say it was a terrorist attack when the Russians say unequivocally it was a terrorist attack, that a homemade bomb with around 1 kilogram of TNT was put aboard that plane? Why can't you say that?
Well, because of an investigation, an international investigation, in which various participants that are associated to the nationality of the deceased or the manufacturer of the company are still undertaking a process of an investigation, and they have not ruled on the issue. So it would be presumptuous of me to make any judgment until the official results of that investigation are in the public domain.
Last December, Associated Press reported that 2 officials involved in the investigation said your police had run their own tests on the wreckage and these had come up positive for traces of explosive. So how do you react to that when you tell me that this explosive hasn't been found?
I cannot evaluate whatever assertions are made by people who I do not have any direct communications with and do not know the authoritative nature of their comments.
Well, they were investigators. And one of them said your government is in denial about what happened. Are you in denial about what happened?
Well, if they were, they should present their assessments to the investigative team, and I would think it very unlikely that people who have an official capacity would make remarks of this nature. So there's a lot of speculation and a lot of hearsay that is being associated, but we have to be very careful in whether those comments were actually made by people associated to the investigation or not.
Aren't you being careful just because you don't want to further damage the tourist industry here and
I think
destroy people's faith?
I think our tourist industry has been sufficiently damaged. There's nothing I can say that can resolve this, and I think the livelihoods of 4 million Egyptians that have been impacted by this circumstance is something that we bear, and the Egyptian people bear the brunt. We are victims here, and we should be treated as victims as others have been treated as victims. But if you care to only put the burden on the 4 million Egyptians who now have lost their livelihoods, we will continue to provide the most security we can. We will continue to provide an attractive and safe environment for our tourists to the best of our abilities. And I'm sure others have, and others who have come under terrorist threat are not deemed to be responsible.
But Minister, it's not sufficient, is it? We had last week 2 fresh attacks. Hurghada on the Red Sea, 3 people were stabbed. A tourist bus was attacked near Giza. 16 dead in a firebomb attack in Cairo. These are not encouraging statistics, are they? Not encouraging incidents either.
No, I think we have to put them in perspective. Whether the bus incident or the Hurghada incident most recently, which was taken care of very expeditiously by the security forces and did avoid any harm, extensive harm to be done. Only very slight wounds were the result.
A Swedish survivor said he lay bleeding on the ground with no one doing anything to stop him until a passerby came along and took him in his private car to hospital. Is that any way to treat people who are injured?
Well, I'm glad that he was provided the care by a civilian and was able to receive medical care that did not infringe on his well-being in the end.
There were no official response to him being injured in that way? No ambulance, no doctors at the scene?
Maybe the gentleman was transported before the ambulance had a chance to take care of him, which is even better in the recognition of the Egyptian people of their responsibility and solidarity with their tourists.
This is a lovely way to turn around what some people might call inadequate measures and incompetence on the part of your officials.
Well, I tend to see the glass as half full, whereas maybe you prefer to see it as half empty.
Well, I'm sure if people are under attack, they would see it as half empty, wouldn't they? Those who've suffered in the various attacks that have taken place.
Those who have suffered in Egypt, who have suffered in Paris, who have suffered in Denmark and in other areas, I'm sure are all subject to the viciousness and
but we're talking about Egypt here. I gather you only answer for Egypt. You don't answer for Denmark.
No, I answer for all of humanity that comes under the scourge of terrorist, violent, indiscriminate, and ruthless perpetration of violent attacks.
But you're Foreign Minister of Egypt.
Yes, I am.
And that is the limit of your responsibilities, I gather.
It is, yes, but I do have a responsibility as a conscientious member of the international community as well.
Let me ask you about your conflict in Sinai, your campaign against ISIS. It has you accused of harming thousands of innocent civilians there. Human Rights Watch says you've evicted more than 3,000 families there in the past 2 years, raised hundreds of hectares of farmland, and thousands of homes have been destroyed. Not the way to get hearts and minds, win hearts and minds on your side, is it?
It's not the way to lose them either when the full compensation is provided, when the...
Not for the farmland.
Compensation to everyone who has been affected will be dispensed, has been dispensed. There has been a
Human Rights Watch says it's inadequate.
I don't take everything that Human Rights Watch or its evaluations as
they're not the only
sacred.
Ones, are they? They're not the only ones. It's
There
a
are
respectable
others.
human rights organization.
I don't contend otherwise, but that doesn't mean that I can take everything that they say at face value.
Said residents got little or no warning of the evictions, no temporary housing, mostly inadequate compensation for their homes.
That is inaccurate because I know for a fact within the context of deliberations on this issue within the Council of Ministers that there was a structured program and that there was a advisory and a determined interconnectivity with those who were affected, and that compensation was discussed and agreed by those who were affected and have been relocated or have been given bulk sums of money to compensate
So
them.
you dispute these findings?
I do, yes.
5 years, Minister, 5 years since the uprising that toppled President Mubarak. President Sisi in November, in a television interview, he said, "We'll do our best to achieve a better democratic future. What has been experienced may not be the best, but we are going ahead with it and will make further progress." What's been experienced may not be the best. It's a pretty lukewarm assessment for what you've done on the human rights field, isn't it, on the democracy field? And,
no, it's a recognition of the evolutionary nature of any society's development and our aspirations and our desires to achieve the best situation for our population always leads us to seek to achieve more. And that is, I think, how the President's comments should be understood.
The White House says you're moving in the opposite direction. Egypt moving away from democracy, it said. The overall trajectory for rights and democracy has been negative, it said 6 months ago in a report to Congress. Series of executive initiatives, new laws and judicial actions severely restrict freedom of the press, freedom of association, freedom of peaceful assembly and due process, undermine the prospects for democratic governments. Quite a basket of accusations, isn't it?
We don't take either the report or what it contains as in any way authoritative. I think the only...
It comes from the White House, Minister.
Does
It's
the
not
White-
just a man talking on a corner, is it?
Hardly. I don't believe that the White House is the evaluator of the international community or other sovereign states.
What do you think
It
they are,
might
a
ha-
bunch of liars?
No, it might have its own interpretation and evaluation, which does not necessarily conform to that of the Egyptian people. The Egyptian people are the concerned party, and they are the only ones who have the justification and the right to evaluate their situation and to deal with it. They have shown their resilience and their ability to deal with it twice and to overthrow 2 governments. If they are dissatisfied to that extent, I'm sure they know the path. They have not taken it because of their confidence and the reassurance that has been provided that this government fulfills their
Well, the White House would say
aspirations.
they haven't taken it because of the series of measures which severely restrict their freedoms in so many different areas.
I wonder whether that wasn't the assessment before Mubarak's regime fell as well, and the revolution of the 25th
It doesn't matter.
Indicated
doesn't
the
matter, does it, Minister?
indicated the inconsistencies of such evaluations.
It doesn't matter, does it? It's the assessment that they gave to Congress 6 months
No,
ago.
what doesn't matter is the assessment of anyone other than the Egyptian people. I put great value in the assessment of the Egyptian people over any other assessment.
Government forces, they say, on the question of accountability, have committed arbitrary or unlawful killings during the dispersal of demonstrators, of persons in custody, and during military operations in the northern Sinai Peninsula. Egyptian forces killed at least 1,000 in one day when they cleared 2 Islamist sit-ins on August the 14th, 2013. Impunity, they say. Impunity. Nobody has been held accountable.
I find it somewhat difficult that with everything that has happened, we seem to be reverting back to issues of 2.5 or 3 years prior as a matter of assessing the current situation in Egypt. I would have thought that the current situation...
Is there a statute of limitations on unlawful killings in your country?
Hardly, but I think
well, then it's still a live matter, isn't it?
If I wanted, I was in a position also to make certain evaluations about other countries' performance.
But
I
that
don't
doesn't
do so.
answer the charges that are leveled at you, does it?
I'm not in a court of law, and I'm not subject to answering any charges. I am only subject to conveying the policies of this government and to assessing to what extent those policies conform to the aspirations and to the assurance that the Egyptian people have in their government.
So do you think the fact that there are problems elsewhere diminishes your responsibility to address the problems that you have in your country?
No, it is only
well?
your reliance on the assessments of others that leads me to challenge that line of questioning on your part.
But Minister, you have to rely on the assessments of others. You're looking at foreign countries for investment in Egypt. You want people to invest in your country.
Well, if that
you want people to visit your country.
If that is the assessment, I believe that the amount of interest that has been shown and the amount of commitment in terms of investment should discount what you have just presented.
Well, you're looking for more, aren't you? You're looking for more.
And more is subject to the environment and subject to the evaluation of what is currently happening and what has happened in the past is,
and also
is
subject
not
to the
effect.
kinds of assessments that you dismiss from foreign countries.
No, it is subject to every individual assessing the situation for themselves and reaching the conclusions that contributes to their interests.
You said you're governed by what the Egyptian people feel, and this is your concern, rather than foreign governments, and I understand that. There's been a lot of concern expressed by your people about torture in your detention facilities. In February last year, Professor Aida Saif Al-Dawla, a psychiatrist from Ain Shams University, she co-founded the Al-Nadim Center for Rehabilitation of Victims of Violence. And she was quoted as saying in February, detainees are tortured when they are arrested, then tortured at the police station, sometimes tortured by the intelligence service. When they arrive at a prison, official or otherwise, they're tortured. While they're inside the prisons, they're tortured. And if there is a hunger strike planned or officers believe prisoners are plotting something for the next round of prisoner visits, they're tortured.
Well, it seems that from her evaluation, everybody's tortured everywhere and every time. And that
She's saying it's widespread.
That's such a generalized assessment that cannot be effectively taken as serious.
She's saying it's widespread.
Whatever you have just displayed is a generalization of such a magnitude that it could not be taken seriously. But in any case, we do not discount that there are excesses of an individual nature that are taken. So
torture takes place in Egypt?
Certainly, most recently, officers have been accused of torture and are being put to trial for that. I believe that there will always be excesses.
How many officers?
Currently 2.
Just 2? Just 2?
Just 2, where there has been sufficient evidence lodged against them to warrant an investigation by the Prosecutor General and a referral to a criminal court for proceedings.
In 1 month alone, in February 2015, the Al-Nadim Center reported 42 cases of torture in prison. 13 Egyptians died in detention centers. The disappearance of 40 people as well in 1 month. This is a little more than occasional cases of things going wrong, isn't it?
No, I think we have to be very careful in assessing and evaluating what might be issued by organizations, respected organizations that might be extracting their information in manners that might not be consistent with the truth. In any case,
including the quasi-government National Council for Human Rights,
where there is an ongoing dialogue and a level of cooperation, and where issues of this nature are referred to the Prosecutor General's office for further investigation and to ascertain to what degree those accusations are valid, and if found valid, then action will be taken regarding them.
They don't seem to think that much is being done about it. Nasser Amin of the National Council for Human Rights says the use of incommunicado detention at unknown locations is illegal and a grave threat to the rights of victims and is often accompanied by torture. This is your own National Council for Human Rights.
No, this is one of the participants in the National Council of Human Rights, and please make the distinction that...
Well, he's hired by it, he's paid by it.
He might be, but he is
so
bound...
he's wrong too?
No, he is bound to be a part of a official process where the Human Rights Council, the National Human Rights Council will issue its evaluations in a structured and in a consensual manner among its members. One member does not constitute the whole council. I hope you would agree.
Last May, after an official visit to Cairo's Abu Zabal prison, the same Human Rights Council said some prisoners had been subjected to inhumane conditions, including not being able to use bathrooms, lack of food, poorness of food offered, undrinkable water, and absence of ventilation. Others had been beaten and threatened. This, again, is your National Council for Human Rights. This is unacceptable, isn't it?
Those observations have been referred to the prison authorities that undertook the supervision of that visit, and if they did make these comments related to some of those detained, they did also make comments related to the overall population of the detention center, which did receive all of the necessary treatment and
But this
facilities.
is a violation of the provisions you've signed up to under the International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights. You're a signatory there. Article 10
these are conditions and
says
situations.
prisoners have to be treated with dignity and humanity.
These are conditions and situations which needs to be rectified if they are deemed to be justifiable.
Why do you sign up to these binding propositions, binding agreements, unless you can deliver on them?
I believe we do our best to deliver on them, but we cannot at all times guarantee that we have the resources, the abilities to do so. And I believe that this is a condition which Egypt is not the only one that faces, but in various prison systems there will always be areas of dereliction that needs to be rectified.
So torture, poor conditions, complaints by your own National Human Rights Commission, complaints by the White House. This is what your president meant when he said he was moving towards democracy?
This is what we do in terms of fulfilling the stipulations of our Constitution on our referral to the aspirations of our people, and we do so with their acquiescence and with their support.
You didn't get much acquiescence from your student population when you annulled the results of the student union elections in November because the wrong people, according to you, won, did you?
No, that's again a generalization, and this is your evaluation of why that happened. And
it's
there
actually
are other
the
reasons.
students' evaluation of why it happened.
Which you are now trying to promote. But
Association of Freedom of Thought and Expression.
No, hardly. This is I think, an area where you are trying to take bits and pieces and take things out of the context of what they truly are. If the elections were reversed, they were reversed on the technical reasons and for reasons of complaints that were made by those who had participated.
Minister,
the government here is a regulator.
Figures.
The government is a regulator, but is not directly involved into the process.
Not according to the 400 public figures who petitioned the president to stop what they called the farce of meddling in the students' free will.
I can refer generally to the thousands of other participants who were quite happy and provided their support and asked the government to proceed along the same lines.
The fact it was a democratic election which you annulled because you didn't like the results.
That's hardly the case.
So why was it annulled then?
It was annulled because there were petitions that related to inappropriateness of certain activities which warranted. Most of these elections
what activities were inappropriate?
Most of these elections are supervised by judicial representatives, and they take the decisions related to these issues. The government is not party to that.
What activities were so unacceptable that you
I would have to refer to the judicial supervision. No, I have no direct knowledge.
You don't know.
I have only knowledge that these elections are supervised by the judicial branch of government, and that we have every confidence in their impartiality and their application of the law.
You have a new parliament that is sitting. You've got a tiny turnout in the elections. Only 28% of voters turned out.
You consider that tiny? I would think that in many countries, 28%, especially in a country like Egypt, which is having a development in terms of its participation would be recognized as a good turnout.
Well, the head of your judges club joked on the first day of voting, no irregularities, no quarrels, and no voters either. So he didn't think that there were many people actually taking part.
You mentioned 28%. You deemed 28% as a insufficient low.
28% is pretty low.
Well, for very developed societies, less than 28% is deemed as a demonstration of full participation into the democratic process.
I wonder which countries.
But it seems that evaluation,
countries.
I can state a few, although I don't like to mention names, and I think you have the capability of referring, if you want to research as effectively as you seem to have done in the case of Egypt, to know which countries.
It's kind of you to praise the research. This parliament of yours has 330 laws to be reviewed in 15 days. How much individual scrutiny do you think they can give to each of those laws?
I hope they will give them as much attention as they will be able physically to do.
In 15 days, they're just going to be able to rub a stamp, which is what they're designed to do, isn't it?
I have no idea what the legislative branch of government will or will not do, and they will take the decisions that they deem in the best interests of their constituents.
Foreign Minister, good to have you on Conflict Zone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.